Okay. I was trying to see if I can record, log on to YouTube. To see if I can record.
You need to mute one of them.
There we go. Yeah. All right, good. That kills the feedback. Yeah, I was trying to see if I can log on to YouTube as well and live stream on YouTube, but I haven't figured that one out yet, but I'll get there. Oh man. So again, thank you so much for agreeing to be on tonight. Thank you, Mr. Terrin. Thank you for joining us. Heard that you're a notable Calypsonian as well as an author, so that's great. Look forward to hearing this rave tune of yours that that was just released. So thanks again for joining Dr. Luncheon and I this evening. This is National Small Business Week 2023. We were excited as we're coming out fully. I think we're fully out of COVID, even though we do have some folks that are still, moving from isolation in the virtual world, doing face-to-face events. And as businesses are starting to pick up, we're seeing more and more events returning. And, we're glad to have a National Small Business Week 2023 where folks are fully engaged again and excited about doing business, right? National Small Business Week is the week in which in the United States, we celebrate the achievements and accomplishments of small businesses, those in our entrepreneurship space. We celebrate the job creation. We celebrate those businesses that are expanding, growing and expanding successfully. We celebrate women-owned business. We celebrate minority-owned businesses, veteran-owned businesses, and just having a passion for that American dream, to launch a business and run it successfully. So National Small Business Week, we celebrate and we recognize the fact that in the United States, we are a vibrant community of 30+ million business owners. And, we're pushing forward with growing our businesses successfully. Tonight's discussion is focused more on why emotional intelligence drives business success. And we have none other than the illustrious Dr. Amala Luncheon, professor at, I think it's Eastern New Mexico University.
That is correct.
And, right. And she is going to lead the discussion on emotional intelligence. And, we really wanted this discussion because as entrepreneurs, as small business owners, as those who are primarily occupying that micro enterprise space, the small to medium-sized enterprise space, the SME space, oftentimes we are engaging the customer. We're face-to-face with the customer. We're face-to-face with clients. We're face-to-face with suppliers. We're face-to-face, with other consultants and those who are colleagues of ours. And having, we're going to talk about EQ and a high emotional intelligence and the ability to recognize our own emotions, as well as the emotions of those with whom we are engaged. And recognizing when, because we all deal with personalities, right? We're in the business of dealing with so many personalities. But what really generates the success in the small business space is how we navigate that space and engage each other successfully, recognizing that we are bringing our emotions together. We're engaging differences in emotions, right? Not just opinions, but also emotions. And Dr. Luncheon, as our authority, will discuss that with us this evening, and we'll get to know a little bit more about what she does and how she came into this space, emotional intelligence. And she has with her Mr. Terrin Callender, who co-authored a book with her. And so we will definitely have some great information this evening. This webinar is being live streamed on Facebook and also being recorded and will be uploaded on our YouTube channel, TM Consulting LLC. That's one word, TM Consulting LLC. It will be uploaded on our YouTube channel, and the link will be there for anyone who wishes to go back and watch this discussion. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and just introduce Dr. Luncheon, and as I have her bio, and then we'll go right into the discussion. Dr. Amala Luncheon is Assistant Professor of Management at Eastern New Mexico University in the College of Business. She read for her BS, Bachelor of Science in Management at the University of Guyana, her Master's of Science in Marketing at University of Leicester, and her PhD at Walden University. She studied management with a specialization in leadership and organizational change, and believes in the power of collaborative effort. To this end, she co-authored a book that stemmed from her dissertation with Trinbagonian, Trinidad and Tobago, national Trinidad and Tobago, right? Trinbagonian. With Trinbagonian broadcaster, I just have to explain that, right? With Trinbagonian, only us Trinis and honorary Trinis, we know what that really means, right? With Trinbagonian broadcaster and creative Terrin Callender, everyday lessons in emotional intelligence. And we have Mr. Callender here with us tonight. Her professional experience is in the field of business management, and she has worked in varying capacities across 4 different industries across the Caribbean and in the USA. She has developed an appreciation for the soft skills that make organizations and social interactions seamless. She knows that both management and leadership can appear daunting, but many of the principles can be taught. She thinks that if you make yourself a student of life, things will become simpler to you. Dr. Amala consistently strives to marry her love of Caribbean culture with academia. She is a systems thinker and creative problem solver who applies holistic approach to problem solving, which is a highly valued skill in today's volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous environment. Yes, it is. Along with her co-author, she hosts a weekly podcast called Everyday Lessons Now. Ladies and gentlemen, I give to you Dr. Amala Luncheon, Mr. Terrin Callender.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Councilman. And you know, when Councilman sends you a message saying, well, could you do this for me? There's not an opportunity to say no. So I really didn't have the opportunity to decline, but I'm happy to be here. Every time someone asks me to talk about emotional intelligence, I can. And then when Terrin's schedule allows, you know, he would also be here with me. So my co-author is Terrin Callender. He is actually Trinbagonian, as you said. He's a broadcaster. He actually hosts the breakfast party on 96.1 in Trinidad daily. And we collaborated to do the book, as you said. Terrin also does a lot of work in terms of talking with young people in Trinidad about, and he speaks to people who are in, I want to say, impoverished areas, kind of, there may be another word for it, but he talks to young men, especially through a program called Empower, and then in his own capacity, because he's well respected in his space. So for me, it seemed like an easy ask when I wanted someone to collaborate with, because I thought, no one would ask me to read my dissertation. You know, it's 170 pages, but then last 2 weeks, 2 people asked me if I could send them a copy of it. Like, what? I never thought this would happen. So, but you know, to their credit, one wants to write with me, and she is she has communication disorders. So she's actually faculty on campus, and then another person, she's actually starting her doctoral work now. So she wanted to see what mine was about, because I do so many things on campus. So she, you know, she's trying to figure it out. Okay. So yeah, I was happy to have shared. But since I wasn't sure that that would happen, you know, I made sure that I worked with Terrin to get the book out, because he's very good at storytelling. And a lot of times what you need is to tell people about something in a way that does not come across as teachy and preachy. Because when you get up on a pulpit, you know, and you start to say things that people are like, yeah, okay. As we were saying in the Caribbean, miss me with that. So
Yeah.
people tend to, shy away from it. So, Terrin has been able to understand. And actually, what I liked by listening to him is I realized that he has the ability to like center stuff. So if he's telling a story, he could bring it back to the center, and people are able to see what the divergence causes in either direction. And that is important. That's not a skill that everybody has, right? So I want to start by going through perhaps some definitions, and so we understand where we're coming from, because emotional intelligence is not new. However, to a lot of people, when they think about it or when they hear about it, they think, oh, I might not be able to do that. They shy away from it just because the name has intelligence in it. So, I will share my screen. Let's see here. Let's go here. All right, fine. And I will go from here. All right, fine. So it's not a very long presentation because I wanted to have the opportunity for question and answer. I hope it comes up the way that it should. All right, so the topic, as you had alluded to earlier, is why emotional intelligence drives business success and growth, right? And Terrin and I are here to talk about that. So first, what is emotional intelligence? And I use these two graphics because they encompass so much. So first, being able to bring your brain and your heart together is important. And a lot of people have either one or the other, or sometimes use none at all. And that is where we have some issues. And then the second graphic shows that your emotional quotient is not equal to your intelligence quotient, because there are times when people think, well, I have to be bright. No, you don't. So what is emotional intelligence? It is my ability to identify and understand my own emotions and to regulate or manage emotions in others, which means that for you to do it in someone else, you have to be able to see it in yourself. At least that would be helpful. So that's a good point of beginning, right? So let us now define emotions, feelings, and behaviors, because people often kind of group emotions and feelings together. So emotions really are automatic responses that the brain detects to a stimulus, which may be conscious or unconscious. And the aim of this response is to secure survival, but in a way that we identify with our well-being. So we think that something is going to harm us, and your brain is hardwired only to keep you safe. So whatever happens, your brain then decides, should I stay or should I go? That's where we get the fight or flight response, right? Feelings, on the other hand, are a mental representation of the psychological change that occurs during an emotion. So something happens, then what do I feel based on what just happened? So the perception of an emotional state is enacted in the body. And there's some variations of, is this a pleasurable thing or is this painful? And you're still trying to make a decision. And all of this happens pretty quickly, right? In addition to body changes, there's an accompanying mode of thinking. So sometimes people think in a certain way, and it comes from all the triggers that they have had. And I say sometimes that people are carrying this basket that they've had from the time they were little. So you keep getting things added to your basket. So your parents tell you, oh, you're such a good boy, you're going to grow up to be a lawyer. They tell you all these good things. Or you have the reverse, where people tell you, why are you so troublesome? You're not going to amount to anything. And your parents say that at home, your teachers say that at school, and it continues. And then you end up with the Pygmalion effect, where it's just self-fulfilling, and that's really it. Behavior, lastly, is the manner of acting that is observable. So I can see how someone behaves. I may not know what they're feeling if they don't tell me, if they have a good poker face, and I don't ask any questions, and I would never know what they're feeling. But behavior is an observable aggregate of responses to stimuli. Right? So there are 4 pillars of emotional intelligence. And the pillars are self-awareness, which is the ability to understand your own emotions, self-regulation, which is the ability to control or regulate your emotions, empathy, the ability to sense and understand emotions of people, and then relationship management. How are you able to manage those relationships. What is important when we look at how that figures into organizations, whether they be small or large, is understanding the type of organizations that you have. So you could have a formal organization where that, and if you look at the graphic that I used on the side, the lines are direct and they're straight, so they're not like fuzzy lines. And we look here at organizations, let's say like a bank, like the Olympics Institute, like the NBA, formal organizations where there are goals and objectives, and you have job descriptions, and people understand that there's a lot of financial resources that are thrown behind these businesses. Then there are authority structures, as the graphic indicates here, and your channels of communication are clearly demarcated. So you know that if something happens, you know who is the person that you're supposed to go to or complain to or ask, whatever. And then there are products and services that they sell specifically. So there's no room for, anything outside of that. Then, of course, if your business is informal, as most are in the small business space, you have some beliefs and assumptions as the owner. And many times you want people to know that this is your business. And so you may be the face of the business. You may want people to come to you if there are things that are happening and so on. Your perceptions and your attitude of doing things come over in that business. Then we also have values. What are the values that you bring to the business? What are the things that you grew up knowing? What are the things that drive you? So really, what are your values? Then, of course, you have feelings that come into play, not just as the owner, but how are your employees feeling? Are there feelings of fear, joy, anger, trust, hope, any of those things, and more than that? That's not everything. And then there are group norms. So what are the things that you normally do as a group? How are those things translated in the business, and who are your formal leaders? And as you see by the graphic I've chosen here, there are some zigzag lines, and if we're looking at communication, and if we think of the old telephone game, nobody may ever get the message as intended here, but that's really how informal organizations work. And sometimes that is good. There may be conflict that arises from it, and conflict could be good. And then you may have dysfunctional conflict, but you have to be able to identify those things, and then you can move forward. Then the next one I have is emotions at work. So what are the things that people have to deal with when they come into the workspace? What is your mental state? What are you inclined to act upon? How are you dealing with what you've left at home, or we expect you to leave at the door? If you don't say anything to anybody, it could be a little bit difficult, right? Emotions, though, could be short-lived, and they could be an intense reaction to something that happens. So someone may say something to you, you snap, and then you go to your desk and you continue on with your day. And then at 3 o'clock, they may come to you to ask you something else, and you may be a completely different person because you're in a different mood or whatever. Okay? Emotions could have a specific and known cause. So I know why I snapped at you when you came to my desk at 10 o'clock. And, I'm over it now, and that's it. And emotions at work can impact both your work attitude and your work behavior. So you may be upset about something, and you may not behave in a manner that actually shows that you're upset about it. You may be able to control that, right? And that's one of the things that we want to talk about. However, your emotions may affect your mood. And if you end up being in a lousy mood, you could pass that on to your coworkers. It could be passed on to, a customer, anybody. So moods are classified as positive or negative, and moods are made up of varying emotions. But we have to be able to define those emotions, right? Moods last longer than emotions. So you could be in a foul mood all day, but you're no longer as sad as you were this morning, or you're no longer upset about something, but your mood could still be a lousy one. You may not necessarily be in the best of moods. And feel free to stop me, if you want to say something, because I'll just go through all the slides and then we could come back. But
Oh, no. Okay. So I was going to leave some comments
perfect.
and and some folks are acknowledging, saying hello on Facebook, that kind of thing.
Oh, okay. All
As
right,
well.
fine. Yes.
So when we talk about values, right?
Mhm.
Values is what you hold near and dear to you, what you see as something as important, right?
Right.
Whether it's communication,
Yes.
relationship building, right? How far do we go as far as having a high EQ
Mhm.
in order to determine how what we actually value as far as an entrepreneur engaging a customer, right?
Mhm.
You're looking
So,
at the communication, you're looking at relationship building. How,
right.
how do they make that more effective?
So your values may or may not come into play in your daily interactions
Hmm.
because you may value, let's say, good communication, or you may value friendships, or you may value the character that the person have because they're church going. So you could value different things that don't come into play, but you
Hmm.
could also have things that impact your daily life.
Right.
So it depends on what those values are. So if you're a hardworking person, or if you value being able to serve, then you look for opportunities to serve.
Hmm.
If you value honesty, maybe you lead with honesty and you're vulnerable, So there are different things that people value that
Hmm.
could impact how they deal with everyday life.
Right.
Um, Terrin, you want to talk about values? As I said, vulnerability. I know vulnerability is your.
For me,
I'm not hearing you.
you not hearing me?
I am not hearing you.
Hold on.
Just faintly.
And you. Oh, I'm not hearing him at all.
What about now? You hearing me now?
Say something. Nope. 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 Nope.
What about
And
now?
you're not muted. You're not muted. So I don't know. Maybe your mic volume is down.
Hear me now?
A little bit. A little bit.
What about now? Much better?
Go ahead. Say
Hold
again.
on. What about now? Much better?
Smidge. Maybe in this case, come closer to the mic because it's not at home.
What about now? You hear me?
Is it a directional mic where you have
Still
to actually?
faint. No. It's not directional, but it's still
Okay.
faint.
All right.
No, it's not.
But go ahead. Maybe it'll sort itself
What
out.
about
I
now? You
hope.
hear me now?
Faint.
That's strange. That's super strange. I don't know what's happening.
Go ahead. Talk though. Talk about vulnerability.
Oh no, what I was saying is that, for me, vulnerability, I always speak on vulnerability, especially with men, that vulnerability is just superpower. When you're speaking values in the workplace, I think what he was trying to say was, what do people value? Are you hearing me? It's hard to
Yeah.
it's hard
Mhm.
Yeah.
to talk if you're not hearing me properly.
Yeah. I'm hearing you. I'm hearing you.
Right. Yeah, what he was trying to allude to was what do people value? How do you measure value in the workplace? But
Mhm.
you said it, you said exactly what I was about to say. It will not all the time what you value might reflect in your business.
Right.
Hmm.
But what you have to do is respect the people that you do business with.
Right. Okay.
You
Good.
understand?
That's a good way to put
So
it. Yes.
because as you said, you might be someone who values service, but your customers are not that at all. You might have a business that what you personally into, your customers are not, but the service you're providing with your business, they're into that.
Mhm.
So you have to value them. You have to value your customers and do it in a respectable way.
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
understand? As
Mhm.
opposed to you might not be able to share your personal values with your customers on a daily basis, but you can
Right.
also instill or make sure that you lead with respect. You know me, I always talk about you lead with love. So
Mhm.
you lead with that, you lead with love, and that is how I think you're gonna get to the end or get to your end and you
Hmm.
feel valued if you
Mhm.
lead with value in a workspace. Well, I should say in a business space, but you're correct when you started by saying it's impossible to give, or I should say it's impossible to value to measure value in a space like that when it's business you're talking about. It's not a personal space.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. You know.
Uh, mhm.
And- yeah, because and that is really great. A great statement, great commentary, because you have folks who might value relationships, but it's the inability to come out of that introverted shell, right? And communicate with that customer or that client to grow or expand that relationship. They don't see that within them. And again, something emotionally can be triggering that inability to really be extroverted and come out of that shell. And in order to grow that relationship, which will result in, a much stronger relationship with that client.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, so let me just finish out this slide. So this one here, I say your moods can affect your work behavior and attitude, and your mood may not necessarily have a specific cause, because we're dealing with people, which of course is the be all and end all of this whole thing with small businesses. It's about people. And if we are able to understand people, we can do well. But if we don't understand people, it can help us to fail. And that is not what we're looking for. So on this next slide, I look at the color wheel of emotions. And these are just a few emotions. So in some cases, one of the things that we do as people, sometimes we ask a question, but we use it as a greeting. And that's something that Terrin and I talk about a lot, because sometimes we say, hi, how are you doing? And that's a greeting. If you ask me how I'm doing, I am going to answer you. I'm going to tell you how I'm doing. And it happened to me this afternoon. I was coming back into the building and I waved at someone. So he is going to his vehicle and he said, hi, how are you today? I said, well, how are you? He keeps going. So, we have to be able to distinguish between, first of all, just having a greeting and asking someone how they're doing. Because if you ask me how I'm doing, I'm going to tell you. And so on this wheel, we have excited, tender, scared, angry, sad, and happy. And then each of these can be broken down. You can drill down to see, well, I'm excited, but I could also be ecstatic. I could be energetic. I could be aroused. I could be bouncy. I could be nervous. I could be perky. I could be antsy. Right. All of those things constitute excited. But if I separate one of these, and I say, like, for instance, my mood on my desk today is bouncy. So this is my mood. I have a little mood calendar. I change it every day. So this morning, someone was passing my desk and she says, you're bouncy. Why? What's happening? So I said, I'm moving between two places today. So I got to do a couple of things. She's like, oh, you indeed bouncy. I said, yes, I am. So, and I change daily and it gets people. And I do it because people talk about moods and feelings when they pass by my desk and they see things, If someone is feeling angry, there could be levels to how angry they are. So they could be raging, they could be furious, they could be mad, they could be upset, they could be miffed, they could be resentful, or they could be irritated. And we can go down and do each of these. But this allows us to see when someone asks you how you're doing and you say fine, fine could be anything from I had breakfast this morning and now I'm hungry, I'm going to be okay, I'm not going to die. Or fine could be, my gas tank is on E and I really need to fill it before I take this long trip. But I'm fine. You know what I mean? So there's several things that could be in there, and we need to do the work to get further along in terms of where we should be with something like this. In the next slide, I talk about emotional contagion at work. Because if you are upset, then you can have other people getting upset as well, right? So emotional contagion would be when one's emotions are transferred to another, consciously or unconsciously via nonverbal channels. So they just see you, somebody sees you happy, and a smile is always contagious. You smile at somebody, most times they'll smile. They'd have to be really unable to read emotions, or they're just in a really foul mood and they don't smile back, right? Emotional contagion must be managed because emotions are easily spread. And the workplace gives you a comfortable place to share grief and trauma. So if you set up your space in a way that people feel that they can come to you and tell you things, then you get to hear the good, bad, and indifferent. So that makes it a good place. And then caring leaders are important. So if you have a leader who is only concerned about their work, or if in your space as an entrepreneur, all you are concerned about is getting your product out or getting your service out to someone, and you're not concerned about people and how they feel and that kind of thing, then, you know, you could be heading in the wrong direction. Emotional labor is the work that employees do to control their feelings and expression of emotions in their space. And you may be in a space where people are expected to, and it's a type of emotion regulation, but you could be in a space where people are expected to be bubbly all the time. So if you're a greeter at Walmart and all you said, "Hey, welcome to Walmart. Hey, welcome to Walmart," then you appear to be happy all the time, but you're not. So you're doing there what is called surface acting. So you're sort of faking it. And sometimes we ask people to do that. When you go onto a flight and the air hostess or air host says, "Oh, welcome to Delta, whatever, welcome to," and they keep saying that with that smile all the time, they are not happy all day long. They are not. They've been standing for hours. They have to stand for this whole flight. They are not happy. But that too is surface acting. So sometimes we require that of people, and they have to come to work, sort of suppress what they're really feeling, and then have that come out to the surface, right? So sometimes it's like that. That though causes emotional dissonance. So you are sort of divided or separated from what you actually feel, because now you've been acting for so long that you don't know, okay, this really is a happy emotion, let me get on with it, you know. Or what if you're feeling sad because you have to put on this face, you're not able to stay in that moment and work through it, and that becomes a problem. So there's incongruence really between what you do and what you feel, and some people have practiced that for so long that it really is an issue now, and we have to be able to deal with it. So in my last slide, I look at some steps that we can use to develop emotional intelligence, because, you know, people are hearing us talk about it, and, you know, they realize that we may be emotionally intelligent, but what can I do today to start on my journey to emotional intelligence? Right? So one of the first things, and they're not in any particular order, because, you know, you could start at any point, and the beauty about emotional intelligence is the fact that people can learn it. So it's not like IQ where you either have it or you don't. With emotional intelligence, you can learn it. So the first one I say is have a positive attitude, meaning just that you have a positive attitude. If you are Debbie Downer or negative Nancy about everything, then your life is probably not going to go the way that you want it to go. And people are going to look at you and figure, well, why is this person so sad? Or why are they so sour? Why are they always in a foul mood? You know, that kind of thing. You need to widen your emotional vocabulary. So you have to be able to describe and define what you're feeling, not just for yourself, but for other people, because people cannot read your mind. I know we like to think that our partners can read our minds and our friends can read our minds, but that is generally not so. You should ask questions, because that's the only way you're going to know, one, how people perceive you, two, what other people are feeling, what other people want, what other people are doing, that kind of thing. And then when you ask a question, listen to the answer. And listen.
Most important.
Yes.
Listen
and we
actively.
need, precisely. And we need to listen, not to respond. Because that's all we do. We listen and you're like waiting, okay, when can I jump in? When can I jump in? So you're listening, but you're only hearing half of what is being said because you're trying to hold on to your thought. And sometimes after someone has spoken for a long time, then somebody says to them, I had a point and now I forgot. Or they say, wait, I was waiting to ask you about something, which means that in your mind, you're just repeating what you want to ask and you're really not listening actively. Right? So that's one of the things that we really need to work on. Then be committed to success. So as a small business owner, one of the things you want to do is to be committed to success. And success looks differently for everybody. So my idea of success may not necessarily be yours, you know, and people have to be able to define what success means to them.
For them as an individual.
Yes, yes, because, you know, I want to talk about this. So this morning, I actually saw this video on Instagram. Through Terrin, I saw this video. So this morning, I almost had to reassess all my life choices because it's Monday morning. I'm getting ready to come to work. And the good Iowa George is on this round kind of platform doing yoga in the Caribbean Sea. He's doing water yoga and showing people child's pose and whatever. And I am saying to myself, there is no way that I should be getting ready to go to work on a Monday morning. And this is the level of comfort that Iowa George is enjoying. There's something wrong with this, you know? So you have to, so that's success for him. He doesn't do what I do. So he gets to do that Monday morning at 7 Eastern, you know, no, 9 o'clock, because it was 7 my time. So, you know, I'm like, wow, I need to make some different choices, or maybe I should have made some different choices. And then, of course, you need to strengthen your conflict resolution skills, because there are times when we let things fester. Something happened, there's a conflict, and we want to hold on to things. So we hold on to anger, thinking that it affects somebody, and they're happy and doing water yoga in the Caribbean Sea, and they don't know that we mad at them, you know?
Right.
So they keep holding on, we keep holding on to things that we really should let go, and we have to be able to resolve conflict. So Terrin and I usually talk about having hard conversations. And sometimes you want to have those difficult conversations because it's the only way through something. You should improve your negotiation skills. And nobody negotiates better than a 3-year-old. So there are things we can learn from children. We like to think that we can teach children things, but if you pay attention, you can learn things from children. And this morning I heard another story, Terrin. I'll let you tell that story about the. Go ahead.
You're hearing me, right?
Yes.
I have a 9-year-old. I named the story Miliana and her recorder. She came to me over the weekend and she said, "Dad, I have something to tell you. It's very important." I said, "Okay, I'm listening." She said, "Picture this. I'm 29 years old. I'm at the supermarket and I'm cashing out my items." And she's giving all these sound effects like how you cash out the items. Boop, boop. And then I started playing my recorder. So I said, "I don't understand." She said, "Let me say it again. I'm 29 years old. I am cashing out my items at the supermarket. Bloop, bloop." And I started playing my recorder. My response was, "It doesn't make any sense." She's like, "Ding, ding, ding. Makes absolutely no sense. So why am I taking a recorder to school?" That was her way of telling me it makes no sense me taking a recorder. I'm not taking it anymore. So she understands how to negotiate quite well.
Exactly. Exactly. So for her, there's no more argument, because what will be your comeback from that? You have to do it because I say so, or you have to do it because your teacher says so. You know, so she negotiated her way out of that quite easily. So we can learn to negotiate from children, but in a lot of cases, we think we are the adults here. We got to tell you what to do. You know, so we should think about that. We also need to be present. And when I say be present without judgment. So someone can tell you something and you ought not to say, "But hold on, if I were you, then this is what I would do." So hear the entire thing that they're saying without judging. And I should say, when there's a situation that you are feeling, and you may not be at 100% when this thing is happening, but you ought to be able to feel it, go through it, and be present. A lot of times we look for a numbing way. So you say, "Oh, well, let me take 2 drinks and then, you know, deal with this." Okay, you're not present. You're not present. So, you know, feel what you're going through. Then observe yourself from the outside. So think about, how did I come across to that person who just told me something nice and I yelled at them? How did I come across giving a short answer to someone who, or not even, let's say, going through the whole series of thoughts when you give an answer? So there's some people who, if I ask them something and they just say no or yes, I'll be okay with it. Other people, you have to tell me how you arrived at this answer. So basically show you're working, like we would do in math, right? So there are times when there are 2 people right now, and Terrin is one of them. The other one is my little brother, Trevor. When I ask them something and I say, "Listen, this is what I want to do," and they come back to me with, "No, don't do that." I would not, somebody else would have to tell me how they arrived at the no, right? So you have to be able to observe yourself in the situation. What do you look like to other people when you just give a short answer? What are people thinking? Have people come to value you that much that just, just a one-word answer is fine, and exactly their train of thought and they know yours?
Right.
Yes, so you have to observe yourself. Note how you feel. And many times when you ask someone, well, how do you feel? They cannot tell you. But sometimes you're not noting that noting how you feel is really about your self-awareness and understanding how you feel in the moment, how you look in the moment, how other people may perceive you. That is the essence of self-awareness. Self-awareness is probably the most crucial part of emotional intelligence, if I had to pick one, because sometimes people don't realize that they come across like a bull in a china shop. They don't realize that, they're gruff about things. And sometimes it takes someone else to tell you, well, I know what you meant, but if you had said it this way, then that's what it is. And I recently had to tell one of my colleagues, I said, I understand what you think you said, but because you're African and the way that African men speak, that came across as rather rude. He's like, no, but that's not what I meant. I said, I know that. And that's because I am accustomed to dealing with people from different cultures. However, think about someone who's lived here all their life, and then you say something like that to them. He's like, oh my goodness, thank you for pointing that out. So you have to be able to observe yourself. And then journaling is a big one. We talk about journaling all the time. Journaling, you have to be able to write your feelings down. If not, you keep them inside. Sometimes people need a journal that has a prompt so they can start the writing. It asks a question and they start writing. Otherwise, at the end of every day, you probably should journal. And sometimes people have a tough time thinking about what they would journal about, but journaling helps people a lot. Terrin journals a lot, I journal a lot, because we find journaling very important. Improve your critical thinking. And how do you improve your critical thinking? By asking questions. Ask yourself questions. You want to ask yourself, well, how would I do this if? Or if I were to ask someone else to do this, what would they do? Or let me play devil's advocate here. If I didn't do this, then what? And you think of alternative ways that something could sound, something could be done, an interaction could be had, but you have to do the critical thinking.
Right.
Empathize. A lot of people do not understand what empathy is. People think that empathy is feeling sorry for someone else. It is not. It is understanding what they feel. It is putting yourself in their space. It is asking if you can help. It is understanding that they don't want you to help right now. It is understanding that they may not want to ask for your help. It is all of those things.
Also understand they might not need your help at all.
Right. But just you being there and asking a question, so you want to empathize. And the last one I have on this list is to get an accountability partner. And you cannot understand how important that is until you have an accountability partner. Because if you say so, because a lot of people have goals and they write them down and they do these vision boards and they do the goal setting exercise and they cut out pictures from magazines and all of that. And then the next year they come back and they do the same exercise and they've not achieved all these things that they had on this vision board. If you get an accountability partner who along the way says, hey, what about X or Y? Or hey, what are we doing about this? You said you were doing this. Where are you with that? That's what an accountability partner is about. All right, so that was my last slide. The next one just says thanks. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing now, and then I could take questions so we can continue.
And I just want to note to the folks who are listening on, who are viewing on Facebook, you can type your questions into the comment section, and I will relay the question to Dr. Luncheon and then have her answer it. And I definitely want to try and bring in those who are joining us here on Zoom. Some great topics, some great points made. Having value to your customers, being of value, and understanding your value proposition One, what do you have to offer, right? What is it about you that others would find valuable? And having, again, the emotional intelligence to be able to convey that to the client or the prospect, right? Not being selfish and caring only about yourself, your project, your work, being able to think about others. When we talk about equity, inclusion, right, in the DEI scope of things, just have an understanding that even on when you're performing on a team, right, and you're building those synergies between you and your team members, understanding that there's no place for selfishness, right? That too can create a problem. That can create a problem. Caring leaders are important, and this is my thing here, because there's a lot of folks who walk around and say, I'm a leader, I'm a leader, I'm a leader, I'm a leader, right? Okay, I don't think half of those people who walk around and say they're leaders really understand what being a leader is all about, right? Having empathy, you spoke about that in the latter part of your presentation, your slide. Having empathy, being able to empathize, even if you're not in a similar situation, but having an understanding.
Correct.
You can come across to someone that you want to understand their problem, and you want to be able to help them solve that problem, right? So under that empowering individuals, right? Empowering individuals. You know what they say, being a leader is not telling people what to do or telling people how to do it. It's being able to create leaders that can one day become,
of course,
replace you and become, senior leaders themselves. So all of that, when we talk about checking our emotions and understanding and that self-evaluation or self-reflection, that's important as well, and being able to understand that, and I think that's where a lot of business owners really miss, especially those who have employees, because it's in small businesses, when you have micro enterprises with 10 employees, 5 employees, and so on and so forth, it's very critical for a business owner to really make sure that you are keeping your employees happy.
Yes, it is.
Yes. Because when you're in an enterprise where you have that little employees in terms of numbers, finding those experts to replace someone who's left, creating a revolving door is very hard, and it can reflect in the bottom line. Because if that person is the only person that knows how to operate that printing press, and that person feels as if they're not being treated properly, they're going to leave.
And sometimes that proper treatment probably means asking them a question when they get in. On Monday morning, if you ask them, well, what did you do this weekend? Yeah. And you probably don't need to know the whole story, but you could say, did you do anything fun this weekend? And then they feel, oh, wow, I'm valued. I'm not just a number.
Right.
And that is important.
Right. I have an attendee here on Zoom, Mr. Mark Ham. Mark, you still with us?
Yes, sir.
How are you doing, sir?
Good. How you doing?
Doing pretty good. Mark is a web designer, social media specialist, and also a real estate individual. He's in a wonderful team with his wife. And, Mark spends a lot of his days interacting with individuals and engaging individuals, runs a networking program called the Happy Neighborhood. And I definitely wanted to get some perspectives from Mark, since, you've been in this space now for 20, 25 years, probably a little bit longer. I don't mean to undercut you, but, you've been out there and you've built that rapport with individuals, understanding your own emotional intelligence and your own awareness of your own emotions as you deal with individuals. Can you share some perspectives with us?
I'm so glad to get here and hear this topic. I think it's such a great topic. And Doctor, you did such a great job on the part that I heard.
Okay.
My friends and I, regular friends, and when I say regular friends that work a day job, and then I have friends that are entrepreneurs. And we talk about this subject all the time about emotional intelligence. And I deal with it all the time in chambers, in small events, in groups. it's just amazing. And it's male, female, it doesn't matter what gender you are, what color you are, what race. When your emotions are touched or pushed, and you're doing business, it completely throws everything off. And the one thing I always try to maintain is a clear head. You know, if I'm ever talking to someone while I'm handling business and it pushes me kind of the wrong way, if I can, without being disrespectful, I'll talk to them at another time. Because I know nothing good is going to come out of an argument or not seeing eye to eye or being emotional. Business and emotions to me don't mix.
And there's actually a name for that. It's called practicing the pause.
Thank you.
Yeah. So you actually
drop that in the chat.
Terrin talks about it. Terrin talks about that a lot.
But the people that I found to be very successful in business are the ones who can control their emotions or keep an even keel. And I have the utmost respect for those people. Austin Thompson is one of them. In the years that I've known Austin, whenever we're doing business, he might have some issues with something, but you would never know. He keeps it calm. He does what he has to do. Now, later on, after the fact, he might have something to say.
Right.
But while you're handling business, you need to be at a certain level. And I just applaud all the entrepreneurs that are out there listening right now. If you plan to be successful, listen to what Dr. Luncheon said. You really need to be aware of your emotional intelligence, because it can make you or break you. Nobody wants to deal with a train wreck in business. Emotionally.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Ham. And Mr. Terrin, I want to touch on the practicing the pause. Could you expound on that?
Like, it's something I say all the time, right? Emotion trumps logic. You understand? You hear me?
Yeah.
And we, especially men, at times, we battle with our egos. We battle with things that we have to unlearn, where we believe that certain things have to go a particular way because that's what we know.
Right.
And we're in a space now where you have to unlearn so much, especially when you're doing business. And that's why we talk about things like listening actively. And when we say pause, sometimes it's better, as your friend just said, to not address the situation in that moment. Because you will see something that you might regret down the road, and it will damage your business.
Right.
So that's why I say emotion trumps logic. When your emotions are high, the logical thing to do gets thrown out the window, because you automatically just jump on the emotional side of things.
Yes.
So that's why we say press pause, give it a moment. And there's something that we do a lot, especially as men, as Black men, is diminish how other people feel. If somebody's telling you something, because we might deal with it differently, you say, but that's not that serious. Maybe it mightn't be that serious for you.
Right.
But in that moment, whatever that person is going through is serious for them. So we have to be careful on how we diminish other people's feelings. That is why the smartest thing to do is to pause. That's why we say it all the time. We just pause, press that pause button, leave it alone, and address it the next time.
Right.
And I'm guaranteeing you, it's a feel safe. It's like proven. You will never ever go wrong.
Right.
It always works. You could never come back and tell me of a time you press pause and it didn't work.
Dr. Luncheon, you said when somebody's talking and you're listening to them, you have something you want to say, but you hold it in. I was affected by what Terrin just said, and I wanted to say something so bad. I was like, no, I'm not gonna cut him off. I'm gonna wait my turn. I'm not gonna let emotional intelligence get to me.
All right, so you can go now.
Yeah, I can go now. Thank you. I don't forgot what I was gonna say. Over the years, I've been in business 20 years, right? And over the years, the few people that I've come in contact with who lost their emotional intelligence are no longer in business.
Right.
It's not a coincidence that the people that can't control their emotions don't make good business people. It's not a coincidence. Right. And so I think they should have been attending your class or going to some type of camp. People are good at what they do, but they're not necessarily good at managing themselves. or knowing how to run a business. And the second you add emotions into it, I really could name 10 people right now that have a great product, but they just don't not you say just the wrong thing to them and they like off the handle somewhere. Like Terrin said, you know, what doesn't affect me emotionally affects them. And they go sideways with it. And what I mean, I'm asking to educate myself, but also to these people, what do they do in that case where they just can't handle themselves? Should they put somebody else in the public eye to run their business? Should they work in the back in the stock room, do the books? What should they go to some type of training? What's the answer?
I would say, first of all, understand if someone can point it out to them because they may not know. So I spoke about observing yourself from the outside. They may not know how they come across, and they may have their ego may be bigger than the bank account they're trying to get.
Yes.
You know, and so you ought to get to a point where you figure out, okay, hold on, I would love my bank account to be bigger than my ego. That should be like the thought process. And so you may need to step yourself down a few pegs. It is already your product. It is already your business. And if you can get to a point where you are more amenable to people and people want to be around you, then that could be it. So I would say, first of all, if someone can tell them if they don't know, someone needs to tell them, hey, perhaps you need to step back a little and do this. And then if you get pushed back, like, well, this is my business and this is my product, you know, go get your own. Because a lot of times that's what you get. And then, like you say, they won't be there any longer.
Right. And I always equate the entrepreneur to the battle sergeant, the sergeant who's leading a troop, his troop or his platoon in battle.
Yeah.
Could you imagine bombs are falling, bodies are falling, men are dying around you. You have a clear mission, right, from your commanding officers that you have to complete. And in the face of the enemy, throwing all of this adversity at your feet, you still have to have the calmness of a leader, of a battle sergeant, captain, whatever, right? Whatever the rank, to sort of, you know, ignore all that's going on around you and still complete the mission.
But that's a little bit different because with the military and with an autocratic style, you may just have to complete the mission. So my brother who's in the military, the lawyer one, he usually says, comply and then complain. I'm like, but hold up now. You know, so, you know, you can, so he will take people through this thing. That's his training, right? But then as a person and as a dad, I watch him now and I think men probably change once they get children because then they start to, I'm like, but who are you with these children? You know, because again, if you allow your children to teach you, then you learn different things and he's able to do that. But his thing is usually comply and then complain, and they teach you that in the military. Right. And in some cases is comply and don't complain. Right. You know, so when you run into a situation like that, that speaks more to leadership than it does about emotional intelligence. Because if your people behind you are crying because you told them, be present. Oh, well, you said be present, so I need to feel my emotions. Yeah. And then be self-aware after that. So, you know, oh, I can't cry. There are 12 people here looking at me, you know, so that it's a little bit different. Yeah. And we can move from the military analogy and even say, okay, let's say, for instance, you have a shipment that will not arrive in time for you to have the materials to complete a project. Yes. Your client is screaming at you because they paid you in advance to have this deliverable by Tuesday, and you won't have the deliverable until maybe Thursday afternoon because the shipment and your supply chain has been held up and your shipment is going to come in late. But the client is like, well, I don't care. I need this because the client has a deadline. So you have all of a sudden, you have all this pressure on you. We talk about negotiation skills, you know, and having our emotions checked, right? Because I've been in situations like that. I've been in situations where, I mean, I've done conferences for years, right? And it's now like this, it's virtual now because of COVID. Right.
I've had moments where my speakers didn't show up on time.
Mhm.
You know, I've had situations where the technology didn't work, right?
Mhm.
As it was supposed to. But it's having that, okay, that sense of calmness, right?
Sense of calmness, and I would also say vulnerability. So
Right.
you have to be able to come to the person and say, listen, I know that we agreed on Tuesday.
Mhm.
However, what has happened is we have this, da, da, da. I ordered it when you said it is beyond my control. This is what
Yeah.
is going to happen. So you give them the reality.
Mhm.
And then when they start yelling or when they start, you have to not match them,
Mhm.
because the matching is where you're going to get, and then someone says, well, I'm gonna have to take my business. I go, oh, well, take your business, take your money, da, 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 and we behave like that.
Yeah.
That doesn't help anybody. You
Right.
and that at that moment you say, well, I'm sorry that you're gonna have to, I'm sorry that that's a decision you'll have to make. Is really is beyond my control. If you want to come back to me another time, and you try to keep your customer because it's already a customer and you're a small business.
Right.
So you don't want to lose a single customer, really.
Right.
So that is the approach that you should take as opposed to
Right.
matching angle, but be vulnerable, for sure, be vulnerable, because it's not your fault.
Right. Exactly. And I just want to read some of the comments on Facebook. Mr. Aubrey Thompson says hello.
Oh, hi, Uncle Aubrey.
He says hello. Glenford Sandiford is watching. Carmen is very excited. Carmen Bernard is our speaker for tomorrow night on financial and investments.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Kevin Laurent. She enjoyed the story with the 9-year-old. And there's some other comments as well. But I tell you, I am enjoying this conversation because I can borrow from my own personal experiences, right? But and I use that as far as leveraging my own experiences even in my consulting. And I'm not as well studied as you in this discipline of emotional intelligence, but there's some things I'm able to convey because I watch business owners with their employees. And sometimes I'm in an environment where I see a certain communication style going on, and I may try to figure out how to intercede. Okay, so let me figure out how to interject myself, and try to sort of de-escalate what I think will be some tension, because we can have a genuine purpose or genuine intent, right, to solve a problem, but sometimes our styles are rough, like you're saying with the African gentleman who didn't really recognize how he was coming across and communicating. And some individuals really don't understand the science behind emotional intelligence, what it means, and how to really grow that EQ, But what I'm hoping this conversation tonight does, it gives folks an opportunity to listen to this discussion from you, Mr. Terrin, from Mark Ham. And I want to get Ms. Precious involved in this conversation as well, since she's tuning in, because we are all engaged with our clients up front and up close, right? As small business owners. And the emotional intelligence and understanding, how important that is. And in some businesses, if not many, emotionally, the EQ pretty much outweighs the IQ, because you could be smart, you could be very intelligent, very competent, and be a master at your craft. But if you're not able to check your emotions and understand how your emotions can push clients away, that's detrimental to a business.
Of course.
Yeah.
And let me say something about communication before you let Miss Precious come on. One of the things is with communication, you have a message and you have a receiver, right? Somewhere in between the person who sends that message and receiving the message as it was intended, there could be noise, right? And the noise oftentimes has to do with the perception of either the sender or the receiver. So you see someone coming to you and you're like, this guy again. And then perhaps you never hear what he says because of how you perceive him. Right. If you have a situation where somebody always comes to you and they bring you good news, from the time you see them coming, you're like, yes, this is going to be good news. Right. And they may come and say something sad to you, and you're like knocked off because, that wasn't what I was expecting. So in many cases, you may have an employee who always has a sad story. They can never work late on Fridays. They can't
Right.
come in early on Saturdays. So you see them coming from the time they knock at your door. In your head is like, oh, what is this again? And you may not even look at them while they're telling you whatever they need to tell you. And then you're fiddling in your phone or something, and then they say, well, did you hear me? And you're like, what? Because you signed them out. So
Yeah.
that is a part of communication that we have to look at, our own biases that we come into these conversations with.
Exactly. And I see it a lot, even as a policymaker on the municipal level. I see it a lot where I have to deal with a lot of emotions with people who want policy to be developed and crafted a certain way to favor them, you know? But I want to give Miss Precious an opportunity because
No,
I know.
she said she's in the air.
Oh, she's in the air.
Yeah, she typed in the chat.
Oh,
Yeah, see, we are not. She's a lot better than we are. We need to reassess our life choices.
yes, exactly.
Yeah, she's listening to this conversation from in the air. So yeah.
I need to be in the air. I have a friend in the air coming back from Aruba, and I'm like, wait a minute, what am I doing?
Precisely. Water yoga, people listening to this from the air.
Yeah, exactly.
Just throw the whole Monday away.
So tell us how, I mean, and you've been in this space for quite a while. You wrote a book with Mr. Terrin. Tell us a little bit about the book that you have written. We want to hear about the book because it's based on emotional intelligence.
It is. So the book is called Everyday Lessons in Emotional Intelligence, a Caribbean perspective. And really we talk about stuff that happened in his childhood, in my childhood, and so on, and we really put an emotional intelligence lens on it. We did it from that point. And so we talk about things like there's one story I give in the book where I spoke about going to, it was my best friend's funeral, well, the memorial service, because I didn't go to the funeral, so I was going to the memorial service. And his brother was coming from Jamaica. We were going to Guyana. And we met in Barbados. So we got on the plane and I am sad and, his brother's joking around or whatever. So I move and I sit next to the brother. So then he says, oh, when I get to the house, I'm going to tell people that you came to sit next to me. No, actually, he came to sit next to me. I said, but hold on, that's not what happened. So he said, well, this is not about the truth. This is about who gets his story out first. I'm like, wait, what? And mind you, he's a politician now. So I said, I have never heard of this. And so in that moment, it taught me you really have to be self-aware. But I did not know about emotional intelligence then in the form that I know about it now, So you have to be able to, when you look back at stuff, you have to say, oh, this is when I learned that. Or you can say, well, this is how I could have done this differently. So you need to have some introspection, some reflection, because you could start today, but then what are the things that you need to correct? Or what are the things you may need to correct or you may need to change? So that's one way to go about it. So we talk about stories like that in the book. Terrin, talk a little bit about the book.
Oh, yeah. And if you can speak up a little loudly, I don't think they're hearing you well on Facebook.
No, you're muted now. Now you're muted. Right. Oh, now we're not hearing you at all.
Mic is out.
Is your mic connected?
Your mic is
yeah, we're not hearing you at all.
We have an interpreter in the house. I had to say it.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I don't know what you changed because I was hearing you before.
All right. Okay.
No, I don't know.
So let's until he gets the mic fixed, maybe he can eliminate the mic. Okay.
Are you hearing me now?
Yes.
Yes.
You hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, as I was saying before, I'm not sure what's going on because normally technology don't ever have the better of me.
Right.
I know.
There's always that one time.
It's always that way. It's always that one time. But no, for me, as Dr. Amala said, the book really and truly was a reflection on growing up and giving stories on how much in the Caribbean space our parents and grandparents have to change so much like today I had a conversation, and because I also do an on-air morning show where we were talking about children that are assertive were called disrespectful, you know. And I am one of those parents who advocate for my children speaking up. Like, one of the things that we have heard growing up is women must be seen and not heard, which is something I do not believe in. And we operate in a space where we tell children, whatever I say goes as an adult, because I am grown and I'm older than you, I am right. So all of these are the things that we touched on in the book, but we made it light. It was light reading. As Amala always say, we try not to be too teachy and preachy, try to keep it nice and soft and fun, where it's relatable to everybody. And me personally, on my everyday journey, I work with a lot of young men. One of the things I always start off by saying, like in the space that I work in with these depressed kids, like one of the stories I like to tell is I met with 97 young men recently. And a question I always ask is, how many of you all know your father? Only 6 of them knew their dad. And this is out of 97 young men between the ages of 14 to 20. So we need to, when you're talking emotional intelligence in the workspace as well, it has to also begin way earlier than you think. You can't wait until you have a business then to start practicing emotional intelligence. From the time you have aspirations to be an entrepreneur, before you even set up your first LLC, you should already be trying to understand what type of business you want and what type of businessman or businesswoman you want to be from the beginning. So by the time it comes around to you having a business, all of those struggles are already taken care of. So you will have the pandemic really highlighted a lot of shortcomings with a lot of businesses around the world and employers around the world. We saw where a lot of employers showed no empathy at all for their workers. And and a lot of things was highlighted, hence why all of these conversations started coming up. And these things that we should have been talking about this a long time ago, but we didn't. But because of the pandemic, that was one of the positives that came out of the pandemic. We now have better conversations with each other. We talk to each other more now, and we listen to each other more now, because you see where what happened, nobody wants to go back there. So because of that, you have a lot of business models have changed. You saw businesses had a lot of redundancy happening. And the pandemic highlighted who's actually good workers and who's not good workers, who actually understand what they're doing from who doesn't understand what they're doing. You understand? So there's a lot of different things we could talk about. But going back to the book for me was quite interesting in the journey of doing the book, because it started off with me not having understanding at all. I entered a room and spoke for hours and hours, and the magical Dr. Amala turned the hours into paragraphs. You understand? But it was fun. We have some other stuff that we're working on currently. And so that's some things that you all could look forward to. But with respect to emotional intelligence and that space, it is the most important thing right now, I believe, in every walk of life. And I'm talking, it starts at home, first and foremost. And it starts not only, you hear emotional intelligence, a lot of people run when they hear the word emotional, when they hear the word intelligence. And you also have to treat with it, not just in a workspace, in a personal space, in your relationships. A lot of people need to understand there's something that we do, a little device that we found called Unpack That, which I will always recommend. It's a beautiful little game that we play where it's therapy in a box, right? And there's so many tools out there for people to use now. And we encourage, every time we speak, we encourage people to use the tools, write things down. Journaling for me is super important. I am one of the people who could fly the flag of journaling, because I see how important it is, and it happens. One of the first things I started to do, we had this thing, you do your 30-day appreciation, where every morning you write, every day you write 3 things down, or it can be between 3 to 5 things down that you appreciate on a daily basis for 30 days. And when your 30 days is up, you fold that up and you leave it alone and go revisit it, like let's say 6 months down the road. You will be so amazed to see the things you wrote down. And when we say you appreciate, a lot of times we take little things for granted. And there's so much joy and beauty in little things. I'm talking about Taking yourself on a date. This is something I encourage a lot of men to do. Taking yourself out and giving yourself grace is something we say all the time. Sometimes you just have to give yourself grace in a moment and understand that speaking words of affirmation to yourself is also very, very important in an emotional intelligence space. Because our next question I always ask my young men when I work with them is, when last has somebody told you they're proud of you? When last did somebody tell you I love you? And you'll be surprised to know how little things like that could change somebody's entire life. Like I always use things like, good morning. You could be living in an environment where you live there for 10 years. You don't know any of your neighbors at all. You've never spoken to them. And one day, one neighbor decides to spark a conversation. And in that conversation, your entire life could change because you have new perspective now. This person is telling you something that you didn't know. And again, when you speak to people, you have to be careful of how you receive and how they receive. And it's always good to have those uncomfortable conversations so that you will know whatever information you're putting out, you have to be careful how that person is receiving it as well. Because we have a tendency of just saying things without any consequence and not holding yourself accountable for things you say. Words are very important. And that is something we always talk about. Your emotional vocabulary is very, very important. The way you say things, the way and how you receive what other people say. And if you have a problem, you should feel comfortable enough to say, listen, did you mean to make that song that way?
Right.
Was that on purpose? And the person on the X might be like, what do you mean? And in that moment, if you didn't ask that question, you would have left that conversation feeling either one, disrespected, two, undervalued, or three, diminished without asking any questions. So it's always important, as Amala said earlier on, asking questions is very, very important, especially in this now time. You need to be comfortable to ask questions if you don't know something. So again, I know the question was about the book and what are my thoughts on the book, but it was really, for me, it was an eye-opener. And from ever since we did the book, we have found so much other tools along the way to help ourselves and each other. And it's working motion. We are actively doing the work.
Right.
And we encourage people to do the work as well.
Right, exactly. And I want to ask, if you talk about, the home training, emotional intelligence begins at the home. It's like branding. It's like personal branding and personal development. It begins at the home. You start with it at the home, and then you take that out into society. I'm in the high schools and junior high schools speaking to young students where they're actually learning team building skills, learning how to recognize certain dynamics and how to build the synergy between different personalities and so on and so forth. But I see a lot more of it now being taught in the schools, so that by the time they're leaving high school or junior high school, middle school, and high schools, they've already developed those skills as they get to the college, the collegiate area, or even if they don't go on to college and they go out into industry, they're taking those skills into industry. And I know you, Mr. Terrin, you mentioned that, having those skills being taught earlier in life, rather than learning it, emotional intelligence shouldn't be taught when you start a business, when you launch your LLC. These are things that you taught prior to that, but I see that now in the schools. And the schools are creating programs around team building and emotional intelligence. If I've met several high schoolers who explained emotional intelligence to me as eloquently as Dr. Luncheon. And I'm sitting there like, what? When I was 16, 17, I probably couldn't have, just articulated, emotional intelligence, so eloquently, but, it's ingrained in them now. So this way, when they leave the school systems, even if they start businesses and don't go on to college, they have these skill sets, and that's important.
I'm happy to hear that, because I'm not encountering a whole bunch of young people that actually know what it is. However, one of the things that we in our department here in the College of Business, one of the things that we are pushing is the importance of soft skills, because students can do the math, they know the science, but they cannot look you in your eye and have a conversation. They don't have a firm handshake. They don't understand who they are as people and cannot tell you what are the things they like and dislike and so on. So those things are incredibly important. And those are the things that we really are pushing now. And you don't necessarily have to teach it as a package. There could be elements or portions of it, that you can do little things at a time. So you start with the little things like being present and journaling and that kind of thing. So people are able to tell you who they are. Yes.
Right. Exactly. And Mr. Ham, anything to add?
Yeah, I was sitting here patiently waiting. I had to write stuff. I had to write it. I had to write it down.
I am so happy to hear this.
I saw the smoke from your pen rising.
Yeah, I did too. I saw him, I was like, oh, he's saying something up there.
And this might come out all over the place, but it's in response to some of the things you were saying, Sir Terrin. So you talk about emotional intelligence starts in the home, and I completely agree. And I think that's part of our problem now as a whole. We're not getting the kind of training and foot in your behind that you used to get back in the day to at least sit you down to think, what did I do wrong? How did I approach that incorrectly? What's a good possibility? You remember, I grew up with my grandmother and she would go get the switch, and they showed love, but they also made you think, what did I do wrong? Let me think twice about how I react next time. Right. And I just want to tell you, when I'm out and about, I'm in a barbershop and I'll see a single father or a dad with his kid. I don't know if the mom is around or not. I take my time to go over to this gentleman and tell him, hey man, I'm proud of you as a Black man, as a man, as a father. If nobody else told you, you doing a great thing, taking care of your son. I watch, now here's my example. I watch a father in the barbershop see who gets in the chair first, the son or the father. If the father goes first, I ain't got no respect for him.
None whatsoever.
But when you put your kid there first, I'm the first one over to you to tell you, man, that's how you do it. You make your child feel like he's something. You put him first, even if you only had enough money for one haircut, you put him first. You can wait, And so I make it my business, whether I'm in a grocery store, the barbershop, wherever, to let fathers know, because the men don't, and it's not in a sexist kind of way, but men don't get a pat on the back or say, hey, I'm proud of you. You might be 50 years old by the time you hear somebody say, I'm proud of you, other than your mom.
Yeah.
You might get it from your mom, but you very rarely get it from another grown man that looks like you, that's similar to you. And one other example is, I have a cousin. I call him my ghetto cousin. I won't say his name. Ty. Cousin Ty, he used to live in North Carolina, country bumpkin. He moved up to Atlanta, to the big city. And he had them country ways, wasn't really doing what he could do. He wasn't pushing himself, but he was always a hard worker. And his father passed. And he said to me, Mark, man, I want to do something different, man. I want to own something. I want to buy some property. And I said, man, it's the perfect time. He said, my dad left me a couple of dollars and I just want to get my life going in the right direction. I said, you know what? Because you said that, you come stay at my house rent free and you stay here until you get your property. And so he got rid of his rental that he was in, and he, got his place, and I'm proud of him. Well, just recently in the last few years, he bought a home. He bought a single family home, and he's married now. So when I see him, I talk to him, I say, Ty, man, I'm proud of you, man.
Right.
You was that knuckleheaded country bumpkin kid, wasn't doing nothing, and now look at you. You're in a brand new house built from scratch. You working hard. You done got bumped up to manager at your job. You're God-fearing. You're doing a damn thing. And so we need to hear that more as adults, because we ain't getting it when we're younger.
Right.
And sometimes it just takes just a second for another person of color or someone that you respect to give you that oomph, to make you recognize there's a little bit more to it than just going to work every day and come home paying bills. That makes you aware of your emotional intelligence, your credit, your pocketbook, your investments. I mean, it's just all around us, but it starts with just as simple as a compliment. So I'm gonna challenge everybody here on the panel per se to go and feed into someone else. Doctor, you are very aware and very intelligent about what you're talking about. Feed into somebody else that's just in the grocery line, about to flip out on somebody, Have a talk with them, and same to you, Brother Austin, and same to you, Brother Terrin. Talk,
Yeah.
talk to these people, man. Get them to where they got to go. But it starts with us.
Of course.
You know better, you do better.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
And
real, for sure.
Yeah. And one thing that I experienced in speaking to students at the middle school and high school level, the teachers would come over to me and they would acknowledge a young lady or a young man. They would say, well, he doesn't listen as much. He or she, they have some behavioral issues, but they're here. And I said, don't worry, I know how to deal with them. It's okay, because again, tapping into your own experience as a 16, 17-year-old and all the people who played an integral part of my evolution, right? I don't know how I got where I am today, but I remember tapping into those people who fed me positive messages, right? Fed me positive messages, and I've always thrived off of that, So I know that when I'm going to someone who has been identified as a problem child, it's okay. It might be a problem child today. That might be your future president. That might be your future. That might be the next Bill Gates, right? That might be the next, Mark Zuckerberg, the next governor of the state. But for now, that individual, whatever he or she is going through, they have all those emotions bottled up, and they're not extroverted, right? But if you coax them through it and you just continue to communicate to them, make them feel valued, make them feel appreciated. That is the beginning of what's to come in the future.
Yes.
Yeah. So we have about 3 minutes. I want to respect folks' time. Last comments, Dr. Luncheon, and then Mr. Terrin.
All right, so I just want to say, first of all, thank you for having me, and I love the opportunities I get to talk about emotional intelligence. I don't take them for granted, and I don't take it lightly. I think people just need to understand that everyone can be emotionally intelligent. So let's leave with letting people understand it doesn't matter when you start, but as Terrin said, if you know you want to do a business, there may be some things that you should check earlier. But if you're here now, then there's some things that you can start doing today that will get you on your path to being emotionally intelligent.
Right.
All right, and same for me. Just want to say thanks again for having me. And as I always say to the men in this space, your vulnerability is your superpower. And to answer Mark, I am most definitely going to because it's something I do on a daily basis. There's a lot of young men I work with, and I try to remember all the time to tell them how proud I am. And I always start by saying, just coming into this space is a step, is the right step. So I'm proud that you've made a decision because you could have been doing anything else.
Right.
Right. Understand? So yeah.
Exactly. And I want to thank Dr. Luncheon. Dr. Luncheon and I go back a long time. And Mr. Terrin, I want to thank you so much. And I want to congratulate you both on the publishing of your book, and congratulate you both on any collaborative work that you're doing, beyond this point. I want to thank Mr. Mark Ham. He and I go back a long time as well, and Ms. Precious for joining. And for those of you joining on Facebook, I thank you so much for your comments. I thank you for joining with us. What we tried to do with the Entrepreneurship and Small Business Summit, as we were doing prior to COVID, this was at a conference center with about 100 to 150 people attending, with speakers, breakout sessions, keynote speakers, a fabulous catered lunch that was sponsored, but due to COVID, everything moved on, on the virtual platform. We have not gone back to an in-person event as yet. We're still weighing that and maybe building some collaborations of our own. But our purpose here at Thompson Management Consulting is providing information, providing educational information to the business owner, to the entrepreneur, so that you can use this information to grow your business successfully and to grow it sustainably. Because we understand in this ecosystem, we can't do this by ourselves. We have to do this in collaboration with others who understand the pains that we go through, right? Those pain points we go through as entrepreneurs growing our businesses. So I thank Dr. Luncheon, Mr. Terrin, for joining us this evening as we discussed why emotional intelligence drives business success and growth. This discussion is being recorded and it will be loaded up on my YouTube channel. Again, TM Consulting LLC, all one word, TM Consulting LLC. I also want to announce that tomorrow night, We will have another discussion on retirement and investment planning for small business owners by none other than financial analyst and guru, Ms. Carmen Bernard. Because just as emotional intelligence is important to growing a successful business, entrepreneurs and business owners have to understand that, hey, the business is not your retirement plan. The business is not your retirement plan. A retirement plan should be created, and investment opportunities in addition to the business that you launch should be considered as you're growing your business. So we're going to have that discussion tomorrow night at 6 o'clock, same time on Zoom with the same password and user ID. But for tonight, I just want to say thank you. This is the National Small Business Week. We're celebrating and recognizing the achievements of small businesses. And we're also providing critical information for small business owners who are definitely using information in order to grow successfully and sustainably as business owners. So I want to say thank you very much. Thank you for joining us, and have a great evening and grow successfully. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
And before we all get out of here, would y'all please drop the link in the chat to the book? So
Yes. Oh, yes. Yes.
Share it with the Facebook community, and shameless plug, possibly sell it on Fashion Mojos.
And no such thing as-
All right, so I'm typing it here. It's everyday
Yeah.
lessons in emotional intelligence. You can get it on Amazon.
Yep.
And it is Caribbean perspective.
Say, Brother Austin, ain't no shameless plugs, huh?
No, no, there's a thing, the shameless plug.
We sell books too.
Well, let me tell you something. They say two people you should never give a mic to: a preacher and a politician. And I've learned as I grow in my political life that if they give you 2 minutes, it ain't nothing wrong with taking 5 minutes.
All right, so you got it there now, right?
Yep, got it.
All right, okay, good.
All
All
right.
right, thank you guys.
All
Okay.
right, Brother Thompson. Good meeting you,
All right.
Dr. Luncheon.
Same here. Good.
All right. Bye-bye.